wild to think about. Right now, a humanoid robot in Beijing just ran a half marathon faster than a human world record.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah, but at the exact same time, if you want to drive your car through Glenwood Canyon today, you are creeping along at 35 miles per hour while road crews literally blow up the mountainside with dynamite.
Just to keep the asphalt intact.
Exactly, just to keep the road from falling apart. Welcome to today's deep dive. It is Monday, April 20, 2026. We are pulling from a really dense stack of sources today.
Yeah, we've got regional operational analogies from the Eagle Valley newsroom, some breaking geopolitical wires, and local municipal community boards.
Right. And the mission for you today, as we unpack all this, is to explore this wild tension we are living in. We're witnessing massive, paralyzing global and environmental gridlock, but that is contrasted directly against these hyper-local municipal innovations that are quietly, keeping communities afloat.
I like to think of it like watching a massive cargo ship trying to navigate a hurricane, right?
Okay, yeah.
And meanwhile, the passengers on deck are just busy inventing entirely new types of lifeboats.
That is the perfect analogy. And that juxtaposition between like digital acceleration and physical stagnation, it's everywhere in the data today.
It really is. And to truly understand why that bottom up municipal innovation is so desperately needed right now, we kind of have to look at the physical environment first.
Right, the landscape itself.
Exactly. The physical environment is acting as the ultimate leading indicator of this systemic shock.
Okay, let's unpack this because the data coming out of Colorado Rockies is frankly jarring. The regional Eagle Valley Snowtel site.
And just real quick, that's the automated sensor network that measures the snow water equivalent in the high country, for those who might not know.
Right, exactly. Thank you. So that Snowtel site reached total meltdown on March 31.
March 31.
Yeah, which is the earliest date in recorded history. And the immediate reality of that is playing out on the slopes right now.
Yeah, Vail Mountain and Beaver Creek have officially terminated their physical lift operations for the season.
And the base depths were just abysmal. Vail closed with a final base depth of just 30 inches. And Beaver Creek exposed with 18 inches. So their mountain personnel, they aren't even running ski operations anymore.
No, they've transitioned strictly to runoff mitigation.
Right, runoff mitigation and erosion control just to physically hold the mountain together.
I mean, it isn't a transition in the spring. It is an abrupt environmental halt.
Though I guess Copper Mountain is the sole outlier here.
Yeah, they are. They're bucking the regional trend with a tactical extension, offering $49 lift tickets for their final week, which is a steal, honestly.
It is, but overall, the primary economic engine of the valley has just stopped cold. I've been thinking about this as like a reverse snow day.
A reverse snow day, I like that.
Right, because normally severe weather, like a massive blizzard, freezes the roads. The local economy temporarily shuts down because of an overwhelming abundance of weather.
Mm-hmm.
But here, the absolute lack of weather has frozen the economic engine. We're seeing it in the Edwardsport right now.
Oh, heavily. The local mountain town real estate market is feeling an intense squeeze.
Yeah, listings are off to a really sluggish start. The sources actually attribute this to a lingering, dry winter hangover.
Which is entirely a psychological bottleneck, if you think about it.
How so?
Well, the secondary home market in these mountain towns, it completely relies on the visceral emotional experience of a pristine winter. Buyers are writing multi-million-dollar checks based on this fantasy of alpine luxury.
Right, they want the winter wonderland.
Exactly. So when they fly in and see brown, dusty slopes in early April, that emotional driver just evaporates.
It totally exposes the extreme vulnerability of this highly capitalized ecosystem. I mean, it's entirely reliant on a single, increasingly unpredictable natural resource.
Right. The private sector can't just manufacture demand when the snow vanishes a month early. They can't print winter.
They really can't. And what's crazy is that the fallout of that local early meltdown, it trickles down quite literally to trigger a federal crisis.
Yeah, the hydrological realities have officially reached the federal level.
Because we know early melt is bad, but historically that water still makes it down the basin to the major reservoirs eventually.
Usually, yeah.
So what is suffering that hydrological connection this year? Because the Bureau of Reclamation is currently executing like emergency maneuvers.
Right, they're actively slowing down water releases from Lake Powell.
And simultaneously, they're increasing emergency withdrawals from the upper basin reservoirs.
Which are dire, higher combat maneuvers against historic drought levels, all driven by that record low snowmelt.
So it breaks the system because of the timing and the soil moisture deficit, right?
Yeah.
Like the snow is melting, but the ground is so warm and dry, it just absorbs the water before before it ever even reaches the Colorado River.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that is the exact mechanism. Think of the mountain snowpack as this massive frozen reservoir.
Okay.
It basically acts as a slow release IV drip of water for the entire American Southwest. Nature designed it to slowly melt and feed the rivers through, late June.
Right.
So when that melt out happens in March, it's like ripping the IV bag open and just dumping it on a dry floor.
Wow, that's a terrifying image.
Yeah, the earth in the region has been in a prolonged drought, so the ground is completely parched. The soil acts as a barrier rather than a conduit.
So it just soaks it all up.
It absorbs that early meltwater immediately. And whatever doesn't soak into the dirt simply evaporates in the unusually warm spring air. It never reaches Lake Powell.
Which completely shatters the federal water calendar.
Exactly, a calendar that was built decades ago on the assumption of slow, predictable, late spring runoff.
So, think about this for a second. If the federal government is essentially hoarding water, forced into emergency mode to save the macro grid of the Southwest, what happens to the municipal governments? They're the ones left holding the bag. They have to manage the immediate, hyper-local fallout of this volatility.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because while the macro environment struggles, local municipal governments are leaning heavily into automated infrastructure.
Right, they're trying to manage the friction. Like, the Vail Public Safety Communication Center just submitted a request for $51,000.
Yeah, to integrate a platform called Aurelian AI.
Right, which is a non-emergency call-taking software designed to assist local dispatchers.
And if you look at the municipal board notes, this $51,000 request follows a much larger $334,000 contract for Axon AI technology.
So we are witnessing a sustained structural shift toward automation in frontline public safety.
Absolutely.
It's essentially like hiring an algorithm to act as a town's receptionist.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Because when physical resources are shrinking, like we just talked about with the water, and economic anxiety is spiking, the call volume at a 911 center just skyrockets.
It goes through the roof.
So the town is relying on code to triage the chaos.
Well, they're turning to code because they've realized a really harsh truth. Municipalities cannot hire their way out of this volatility.
No, it's too expensive.
Right. The local cost of living is exorbitant, housing is scarce, and the human labor pool is stretched to its absolute limit. You can't simply staff up with 5 new human dispatchers when it costs thousands of dollars a month.
So to protect the existing dispatchers from total burnout.
Yes, to ensure they actually have the cognitive bandwidth to focus on real life or death emergencies, they use the AI to filter the noise. They are making automated infrastructure their primary buffer against systemic friction.
Which is amazing, honestly, that we can code an AI to triage human panic in milliseconds.
It is.
But, and here's the catch, that code cannot patch a pothole.
No, it cannot.
When you look at the physical travel logistics in the Valley today, we're transitioning right back into the brutal reality of physical infrastructure. It is an obstacle course out there.
Oh, it's a mess.
Today kicks off the 2026 final construction season for the West Vail Pass Auxiliary Lane project.
Yep.
The pass, specifically Vail Pass, mile points 178 to 190, is open, but the passenger vehicle traction law, Code 15, is actively enforced.
And for those unfamiliar, Code 15 means mandatory tire chains or highly specific snow tread depths are required just to legally be on the road.
Right, and the Highway Patrol does not mess around with enforcement there.
Not at all. And that is just one corridor. The congestion compounds dramatically when you look further west.
Oh yeah, Glenwood Canyon. The capacity there remains severely reduced to 50% due to ongoing bridge joint reconstruction.
Yeah, they are physically ripping out and replacing those massive metal teeth that allow the concrete bridge segments to expand and contract with temperature changes.
And because of the heavy machinery and the exposed gaps on the road, they are strictly enforcing a 35 mile per hour speed limit.
Which is agonizingly slow for that stretch.
It is. I mean, the ramps at Shoshine and Hanging Lake just reopened after paving, which relieves a tiny bit of pressure.
A tiny bit, yeah.
But further east, CDOT is conducting rock scaling traffic holds at Floyd Hill.
Rock scaling.
Yeah, this is where crews are literally suspended on the cliffs with pry bars, manually triggering small rock falls so boulders don't unexpectedly crush cars later.
Wow.
And this causes traffic holds of up to 20 minutes at a time. It brings us right back to that initial contrast. We are fielding 911 calls with artificial intelligence, but moving a physical car through the mountains still requires scaling cliffs with crowbars and creeping along at 35 miles per hour over damaged concrete.
It's a huge disconnect.
Is physical infrastructure fundamentally incapable of keeping pace with modern demands?
Well, infrastructure is inherently the most rigid layer of our society. I mean, digital technology iterates at the speed of thought. You can patch a software bug in an afternoon.
Right?
But concrete, steel, and asphalt, they iterate at the speed of environmental reviews, multi-year budget appropriations, and, literal geology.
Literal geology, exactly.
When the climate changes rapidly and the economy shifts overnight, the physical infrastructure remains the primary bottleneck. You simply cannot download an over-the-air update to a dynamited canyon.
You really feel that physical inertia in your bones when you're sitting in a 20-minute rock scaling hold on the highway.
Oh, absolutely.
But, that intense local gridlock on the mountain passes, it's actually a perfect microcosm of the massive geopolitical gridlock happening globally right now.
The scale shifts from local to global, but the underlying theme of system paralysis remains identical.
It does, and when we look at the global wires today, and hey, let's just take a quick pause here for the listener.
Yeah, a mandatory timeout.
Exactly. We need to explicitly state that we are not taking sides on any of these politically charged issues, left wing or right wing.
Right. We are just impartially reporting the geopolitical realities outlined in the sources, purely to highlight the sheer scale of global instability today.
Exactly. No endorsements here, just the facts from the wire. So looking through that logistical, nonpartisan lens, the scale of systemic gridlock is staggering.
It really is.
Iran has fully closed the Strait of Hormuz in response to a U.S. naval blockade, and they've actually fired on ships attempting to pass through.
Which is a massive, massive choke point for global energy. Nearly 20% of the world's oil passes through that strait.
Meanwhile, President Trump announced ahead of talks in Pakistan that he is, quote, highly unlikely to renew the ceasefire with Iran.
And the mechanism here is so direct, right? A blockade in the Middle East spikes global diesel prices.
Right.
Which means the trucks delivering gear to Vale or fresh food to Gypsum suddenly cost significantly more to operate.
Instantly driving up local inflation.
Exactly. And the administrative friction domestically is just as high right now. There's major turnover and legal entanglement happening simultaneously.
Right. Lori Chavez DeRemer is resigning from Trump's cabinet amidst ongoing investigations.
Yeah.
And at the exact same time, Kash Patel is filing a $250 million defamation suit against the Atlantic.
The bandwidth of the federal apparatus is just entirely consumed by internal and international conflict.
And it extends deep into the corporate and environmental spheres, too. Tim Cook is stepping down as the CEO of Apple.
Which signals a massive, uncertain shift in global tech leadership.
And across the Pacific, Japan has officially issued a megaquake alert following recent seismic activity. I mean, naval blockades, cabinet resignations, defamation lawsuits, megaquake alerts, huge corporate leadership shifts. The macro environment is just fundamentally unpredictable.
It is.
The systems that dictate global trade, national policy, and international security are buckling under the weight of constant compounding crises.
It creates this state of perpetual cognitive overload for anyone trying to navigate it. The macro systems are too large, too slow, and too bogged down by conflict to provide any sense of stability to the average person.
Which brings our mission today's full circle. I want to contrast that overwhelming, paralyzing global news with exactly how local residents in the Eagle Valley are coping today.
Yeah, let's bring it back home.
Because while the Strait of Hormuz is blocked and the federal government is hoarding water, what are the municipalities and the people in the valley actually doing?
They're leaning hard into community support.
Yes, community support and local resilience.
That hyperlocal response is really the only functional antidote to macro paralysis.
Let's look at the community boards. The town of Eagle just transitioned their internet billing to utility systems to streamline services.
Nice.
And more importantly, Eagle has $34,000 available right now for local sustainability grants.
Oh, that's substantial.
It is. And down the road, the community market in Gypsum continues providing free, fresh food to residents.
Which directly combats those cost of living pressures and supply chain price spikes we were just talking about.
Exactly. And looking at tonight in Eagle, there is sustainability trivia at Capitol Public House. At the Walking Mountains Museum in Avon, there's an earth grounding yoga session. And on Thursday, the Bookworm of Edwards is hosting a prez with an advocate to support Sexual Assault Awareness Month, bringing in the Bright Future Foundation.
This raises an important question, though. I mean, really think about where safety actually originates.
Now, where are you going with this?
Well, in an era defined by macro instability, where the news cycle feels like a constant barrage of existential threats, does true security actually come from a federal policy? Or does it come from an earth-grounding yoga class in Avon and a local sustainability grant in Eagle?
When the macro systems are gridlocked, people stop looking up at the federal level for solutions and they start looking next to them.
Right. They look at their neighbors.
These local events, the trivia nights, the yoga classes, the local advocacy, they aren't just leisure activities. They are the structural reinforcement of a community's mental health. They build the social fabric required to maintain the capacity to keep functioning. The world outside the valley feels completely chaotic.
You cannot personally influence a naval blockade in the Middle East.
Obviously not.
And you cannot single-handedly alter the evaporation rate of the Colorado River Basin to refill Lake Powell. But you can attend a pray with an advocate.
Exactly.
You can volunteer at the Gibson Community Market. You can engage with your local town council to ensure Aurelian AI is actually making your local dispatch center more efficient.
Right.
In a world defined by global friction, hyperlocal action is the only space where an individual can still exert meaningful, measurable control.
So let's recap the journey today. We started out looking at a physical landscape where the snow melted earlier than ever recorded,
Yeah, March 31.
abruptly halting the mountain economy and triggering a psychological freeze in the local real estate market.
The dry winter hangover.
Right. We tracked how that specific local water shortage breaks the federal water calendar, forcing the Bureau of Reclamation into emergency maneuvers at Lake Powell. We saw local police forces deploying artificial intelligence to manage shrinking resources, all while commuters creep along at 35 miles per hour over dynamited canyons.
A wild contrast.
And then we juxtaposed the threat of international naval blockades and megaquake alerts against the quiet, necessary resilience of an earth-grounding yoga class in Avon.
The macro systems are undeniably stressed, but the local communities are adapting and innovating faster than the institutions can even process the data.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? How do you handle the friction in your own daily life when the massive systems you rely on start to buckle?
It's the ultimate question right now.
It is, and I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over as you go about your day.
Okay.
As our national and global systems, from federal water management to international supply chains, become increasingly paralyzed by unpredictability and conflict, is the very concept of the nation state becoming obsolete to our daily survival.
I mean, if the federal mechanisms are too slow, too distracted, or too gridlocked to respond to a hyperlocal crisis, whether that's a housing shortage or a dried up reservoir, where does our allegiance and our practical safety actually lie?
Will your future safety, your actual day-to-day survival, rely far more on the competence of your hyperlocal town council, your local AI dispatchers, and your community support networks than on any federal policy or international treaty?
It really makes you rethink your priorities.
It does. When the macro storms hit and the cargo ship starts taking on water, maybe the only thing that truly matters is the strength of the lifeboat you and your neighbors built together. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the sources. Keep paying attention, keep supporting your local community, and keep asking the big questions.
On March 31st, the Eagle Valley Snowtail site reached total meltout. It's the earliest recorded date in history, forcing an immediate valley-wide environmental shift. With the lower mountain snowpack structurally compromised by record heat, both Vail Mountain and Beaver Creek have terminated winter lift operations weeks ahead of their scheduled closing dates. This sudden loss of the winter calendar triggers a pivot across federal water management, local real estate markets, and essential regional infrastructure. To combat historic drought levels driven by this missing snowpack, the Bureau of Reclamation is slowing releases from Lake Powell and increasing withdrawals from upper basin reservoirs. This domestic environmental stress is being compounded by international instability. Following a U.S. naval blockade, Iran has closed the Strait of Hormuz, firing on shipping vessels and impacting global energy markets. These federal water panics and global energy shocks create a volatile environment for mountain town supply chains, which rely on predictable costs and resource availability. Locally, this volatility is reflected in the housing market. Eagle Valley real estate listings are experiencing a spring slump as the lack of snowfall and early resort closures stall typical seasonal momentum. Private sector operators are attempting to bridge the gap with aggressive adjustments. Copper Mountain is bucking the regional closing trend, extending its season and slashing lift tickets to $49 to capture remaining market share. Municipalities are also shifting their focus to operational efficiency. The Vail Public Safety Communication Center is requesting $51,000 to integrate Aurelian AI software designed to automatically triage non-emergency dispatch calls. Success in this environment currently favors organizations that implement aggressive, real-time technical adjustments rather than waiting for traditional seasonal cycles to normalize. Physical transit is also tightening. The final construction season for the West Vail Pass Auxiliary Lane project has resumed, and passenger vehicle traction laws remain strictly enforced through May, despite the resort closures. Further west, throughput in Glenwood Canyon is limited to 50% capacity, with a strictly enforced 35-mile-per-hour speed limit to allow for bridge joint reconstruction. These active construction choke points squeeze the main logistical artery, compounding the valley's transit friction during this seasonal transition. This record-breaking meltout has forced a break from the standard seasonal schedule. Planning now requires a state of constant, real-time reaction to environmental and infrastructure shifts. In preparation for potential summer water restrictions, the community is coordinating through local support networks and resilience initiatives with organizations like the Bright Future Foundation. Expect continued logistical friction on the roads and in the markets, but prepare for aggressive community adaptation as the valley secures its footing.